Yes, you. Welcome to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast, a podcast for people who want to disrupt their lives for a good reason, to make it count. I'm your host, Jen Glantz, and every week I'll drop a new episode with stories from real people just like you, who woke up one morning and decided to make big changes, starting with small things. We'll cover topics like entrepreneurship, love, failure, and self-care. Hey, you're not getting any younger, so let's make this an adventure. Ready? Hey, any youngers, Jen Glantz here. Welcome back for another episode of the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. My goodness gracious, look at us. We are in the 60s, meaning we have over 60 episodes of this show. We're going to be at 100. My goal is to get there by the end of the year. We're going to have 100 awesome episodes, so many cool guests booked for you. There's a couple of future guests that I have on this show that I was so nervous to reach out to ask them to be on the show because they're pretty badass and pretty big. And finally, one day I drank a lot of coffee and I said, send the email. And I reached out to these badass people and they got back to me and they're going to be guests on the show. I'm not going to ruin anything for you now to tell you who they are, but keep listening, keep hanging out with us. Make sure that you subscribe so you always get notified when there's a new episode. Plus, if you can leave us a review on iTunes, it'd be so helpful. And the last thing I'm going to tell you, I always tell you this, come hang out with us in the Secret You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group. If you've never joined a Facebook group before, they're free. They're also private. So anything you say in the group stays in the group. So you have access to over 1,000 people who can help you with problems, who you can relate to, who can be there for you. Today's topic and today's problem that I want to talk about is standing up for yourself. And this has been something that I've had trouble with over the years because I can be a little bit secretly introverted and totally very shy. I was shy for the majority of my life. In fact, when people used to ask me my name, I would literally break out into hives. I was so painfully shy. And that's changed. I love public speaking. I love teaching. I love that kind of stuff. But when it's a one-on-one situation or even sometimes a bigger group where I have to stand up for myself, sometimes I panic. And the panic's not too pretty. I'll give you an example of something that happened to me recently. I was back in Florida with my mom. And we were at a store trying on clothing. I desperately need jeans. All my jeans are really old, really have holes in the wrong places. The last pair of jeans I went to put on, I realized that there was a hole all over the butt area where you could see obviously way too much. It was not one of those cool holes on the butt area. It was that's her butt. So had to give away those jeans and I went shopping for new jeans. And when I was in the try-on room, I took off a pair of jeans, put them on the floor and was climbing out the other leg from the jeans. And while I was doing that, I put my foot down on the jeans and my foot went into a loose screw. Now, I'm not going to gross you out. Some of you are listening to this on your lunchtime, but basically what happened was those sensors, part of the sensor was off. So there was just a loose metal screw sticking up that went straight through my foot. And it's so crazy because when something like that happens, everything goes into slow motion, but freeze. So I just remember no words coming out of my mouth, no scream. I just remember looking down and being there's a screw in my foot and pulling it out. Okay. I'll give you some time to just digest that. So I'm in the dressing room, screw in foot, pull it out, obviously blood everywhere. Have to somehow put on pants because I'm about to let the world know that I stepped on a screw and here I am naked. So I put on pants and I'm screaming. I'm screaming so loud my mom comes in. She's screaming. And eventually, after 5 minutes of screaming and blood everywhere, a manager comes and this is the least helpful person in the world shows up. And he's basically hey, are you okay? Here's a Band-Aid, good luck. And I'm just are you kidding me? You just put me in a dangerous situation by having loose screws on your pants. And also, there's blood everywhere. I don't have health insurance. I have a really bad catastrophic health insurance that only covers me in a really bad emergency. And the other interesting thing is I haven't gotten a tetanus shot in maybe 20 years. So here I am with a screw that came out of my foot, no insurance, and the guy's pretty much here, clean up your mess and leave. And I went into full aggression. I started screaming at him. I started yelling at him, basically just like got all my anger out on him. And the guy absolutely didn't care. And this was just one of those situations where I realized something about myself is that I have two modes. I have passive mode, where I find myself in a situation and I don't stand up for myself. I swallow my pride. Or I find myself in a situation and rather than standing up for myself, I just start screaming. Like I get full on angry beast monster mode. Long story short, what happened here is my mom and I sat in the dressing room with blood everywhere for, no joke, an hour and a half to 2 hours before finally, and most of this is thanks to my mom, who's really good at being assertive, finally we got the manager to follow us to an urgent care center and pay for the tetanus shot. Yeah, crazy. And that was like really freaking hard to do. And in the 2 hours of like coercing this person to make things right for their faulty error, it just showed me that I need to personally get better at that middle ground of being able to stand up for myself and being more assertive. And I'll tell you another example. The other day, I was at Whole Foods, which is like, first of all, way out of my budget, but second of all, the closest grocery store to where I'm living in Brooklyn right now. So I went to Whole Foods to get stuff to make for dinner, and I got this asparagus. And the asparagus is my favorite thing to eat, but it's so expensive. It was like, I don't know, like $3 a pound. So my boyfriend and I are like measuring the asparagus to make sure it's not a drop over a pound. We're not paying more than $3. And then as we're checking out, I noticed when the cashier rings up the asparagus, it rings up as like $6. And I was like, oh my God, wait, that's not right. And she's like, well, it's like organic. And I was like, oh no, it's not. Like it's wrong. And she pauses and she checks the price. And as she's checking the price, I don't keep my mouth shut. I talk through it and I'm like, oh, wait, maybe you're right. I'm sorry. It's my fault. Like, and meanwhile, it turns out that we were right and she made the error. But I became so passive in that situation rather than throwing out my assertion of like, hey, this is wrong, fix it. I just became like this babbling fool of like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. So today's episode, I want to talk about how we can become more assertive, because I think it's something that if we find ourselves more introverted, more shy, or just not good at standing up for ourselves, we should try to become better at it. So my first step for you and for me is to take smaller but powerful steps. Like the example of what happened in the clothing store is obviously very drastic, and you're right. Like a lot of you are going to be like, you have every right to be screaming your head off, and you're right, but screaming your head off does not get you anything, especially when it comes to customer service. So I think one of the small steps I could have taken was the Whole Foods example of using those kinds of places as a way of testing out my confidence, testing out my assertion skills. Rather than looking for that next big moment to be assertive, it's doing it at the small moments when you realize something was rung up wrong at a cashier, or you realize that maybe you're trying to check in for a flight and something happens there, or you're calling customer service. Rather than going from passive or aggressive, finding that middle ground. The second thing is, how do we deal with the other person's personality? And there are times when you're in situations that just escalate because both people become so aggressive. And one way to just keep you balanced, to keep you to be calm and assertive, is to let the other person finish. So if you're in an argument with somebody and you're trying to stand up for yourself, they are not going to listen to you when they are in a state of aggressiveness. So it's important to let them finish. Let them get everything out, yell at you. While they're yelling at you, you think about waterfalls and waves and the beach, anything to calm you down. And once they are done, hit them with silence. Because aggressive people are often looking to have you climb up that aggressive ladder as well, and hitting them with silence and then coming back at them with a calm, cool, collective assertiveness state will really help de-escalate the situation and get them to listen to what you are saying. The next thing I'll tell you is to figure out what's actually bothering you. I find that a lot of times when I enter situations and choose to be aggressive, I'm just getting out so much resentment I have for so many situations I was passive in. Like, it's not even about the asparagus, and it's not even about the nail that went through my foot. It's just about the fact that I have spent so long of my life being silent and not standing up for myself. So I think before we stand up for ourselves, we have to have that internal conversation of what it is we're really looking forward to having done and what we want to achieve and all those kind of things to help us feel more empowered and to feel more in control. But also remembering that nobody can read our mind. So when we resent how we acted in a situation, that's on us, because if we don't vocalize what's bothering us, nobody in the world will know. I think the other tip I can give you, again, that I'm trying is the practice. Practicing obviously makes you a lot better at doing this. So whether you're at a restaurant, customer service, any kind of situation like that where you can practice in, it helps. And research actually shows that it takes 66 days to form a new habit. So if you want to become assertive, it's not going to be a tomorrow thing. It's going to be a step-by-step thing that you try to deliberately do daily so that after a while, it becomes part of your personality and it becomes part of who you are. And sometimes it's faking it till you make it. And I know that's sort of a crazy thing, but one of the things I've been trying to do is envisioning that assertive person I know, and that's my mom. She's very assertive in a really awesome way. So when I'm in those situations, I ask myself, well, what would my mom do? But then I also try to think about, okay, what kind of words would she use? Body language that she would use. A huge part of my problem, and maybe yours, is it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And when I stand up for myself, I say it in that aggressive way. I also recently learned that you could never be too assertive. Assertive does not equal aggressive. Assertive is standing up for yourself in that calm, controlled manner. Aggressive is losing control. And I mentioned it's how you say it, and a lot of that is body language. Like practicing making sure your body language shows you as confident is huge as well, because aggressive, you're throwing your hands in the air, your eyes are bulging, your facial expressions are bulging, but being assertive is being in control. It's standing up or sitting up straight, it's having your arms nearby, it's being forward facing, making eye contact. It's also in using silence to make sure that you're calming your breath, calming your mood, but also silence is a good negotiation trick because it makes the other person panic. All of those things are helpful for you to stand up for yourself. There are so many more tips, and I want to know, are you assertive? Are you passive? Are you aggressive? What are you, and how can you improve? But also, what tips do you have for other people out there to improve? So I challenge you, come finally hang out with us in the Secret You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group. Let's talk through this. Let's talk about this. Let's help each other stand up for ourselves. I'll see you there. Hey you! Thank you for listening to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. There are hundreds of thousands of pods out there, so thank you for listening to this one. You can find the show notes for this week's episode up on our website, anyyounger.com. Subscribe, rate, and review the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast on iTunes so that other ears around the world can listen too. Oh, and join our Secret You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group, where over 1,000 people are talking about how to disrupt their lives, for good reason, to make it count. Until next week, all my love, Jen Glantz.